Hey. So I'm kind of under the weather, so I'll just let past Elliot take it from here. She's looking great today anyway. Go for it, babe. So, speaking of the Supreme Court, let's talk about how you even get there in the first place. So, let's say you've been arrested. Well, that's kind of sad. I hope none of y'all ever get arrested. But, so let's say you have to go to court, or you're suing somebody, or whatever. You probably are starting off in a state trial court. These are courts of original jurisdiction. That means that's where cases originate. And so here's where there will be a finder of fact, whether that's a judge or a jury, where they are where the cases get pled, and the finder of fact says, "Okay, yep, these are the facts. This is what happened," and then the judge gets to pass sentences and all that. But if something goes wrong, like if some evidence was improperly admitted or improperly excluded, or this is when there's errors like that, then you can file for an appeal. An appeal cannot be on the facts, it's got to be on the process. So this is why, if you've ever watched any courtroom dramas or been in a real courtroom, this is why lawyers are always objecting. This is why they say, "I object that he's badgering the witness," or "I object, this is bullshit evidence." That's not a real objection. But the reason they object is to have it on file or down in the record, like for the record. "I object to this. This is an error. This is something that I can appeal on." If they don't object to it in the trial, they can't appeal to it later. So this is why you always object. Get that shit written down, like this is a problem. But if they decide that, like, yeah, it was you in the observatory with the candlestick. That was a bad joke. Do y'all even know about Clue? Have y'all seen the Clue movie with Tim Curry? It's great, but it doesn't matter. That was a dumb joke. If the finder of fact decides that yes, it was you and you're guilty, that is not what's being appealed. It's only the procedure. Anyway, let's say you lose your appeal in the appellate court. Well, then it can go up to the state Supreme Court. This is the Supreme Court of the state. So for us, that'd be the Supreme Court of North Carolina. And they obviously don't hear as many cases. They can't like review every single one that happens. So they try to cut it down a little bit. Like they're not just going to hear every single asshole's appeal. Like a lot of them is like, "Yeah, this was carried out correctly. You're guilty. Deal with it." But let's say they turn you down and you're like, "No, GD, this is violating my constitutional rights to a fair trial." In that case, that's when you try to go to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court of the United States hears even fewer cases. They have to issue a writ of certiorari in order to say, like, "Yes, we will listen to this." But think about it. They're hearing cases from all over the nation. They're not going to want to hear just like my problems, unless it probably does answer some constitutional question of constitutional law. So, or if they want to like overturn precedent or something big like that. So, so you can go that way from state trial court to appellate court to state Supreme Court to the big guys, the SCOTUS, Supreme Court of the United States. You don't have to start in a state court, though. There are also federal courts. Now, federal courts are courts of limited jurisdiction. Generally, you only get into a federal court if it's a question of federal law. So, like if the DEA was busting down your door, then yeah, it's federal law. But You can also get into federal courts on what's called diversity jurisdiction. This is when it's a suit between people from two different states. So, like, if me, a North Carolina resident, goes down to Florida and I get in a car accident by someone from Rhode Island and the damage is more than $100,000 or whatever, then yeah, we could go to federal court. The only reason you might want to choose that is because there are differences in precedent in law when you're talking about federal courts versus state courts. Anyway, if you go to federal court and you want to appeal, there are federal courts of appeals. And the U.S. is divided up into districts. I think North Carolina is the 4th district. I probably should have looked that up before I started this video. But anyway, you go to like the 4th Circuit Court of Appeals. If you lose there, then yeah, boom, you got to try to get into the Supreme Court again. But you still need for them to actually like want to do it. They have to agree to do it at any point in the appellate process on either side. The court can just be like, nah, we don't want to hear that. It's good. It's done right the first time. So deal. So it's hard. It is difficult to get to the Supreme Court with any case. Which I mean, it makes sense. We're talking about big, like, change in the nation kind of decisions potentially. So it's still hard, and you have to make a good case that there's some constitutional reason that you should win, and all of this takes just a lot of time. Like, if you have gone to court, then you know that going through the court system can take years. It can take decades to get all the way through the Supreme Court. Now, it doesn't always, but it can. And so not only is that a lot of time, that's a lot of billable hours for your lawyer. It's expensive to get it to the Supreme Court. This is why things like the NAACP need money, and the ACLU, they need money to pay the blood-sucking lawyers. And I say that with all kindness in my heart. But yeah, so it's hard. It's difficult to get to the Supreme Court. But, I mean, should you even want to? Might it be better to try to change the laws that are passed? What if we can get our own amendment to change whatever right we're fighting for? So, we'll talk about that. Once you get to the Supreme Court, the justices just interpret the law. So they have to say, like, yes, something about this law is unconstitutional, or something about the way this happened to you was unconstitutional and violates your rights. They don't make new laws, ideally. That's the job of the legislature. It's the job of Congress. It's the job of your state congressmen and women. So there's two kind of like main ways of looking at this. And this is a simplification, so I hope you'll forgive me. But one is judicial restraint, and one is judicial activism. Activism is usually thrown around as a dirty word, but I mean, whatever. I think it's kind of a good idea, or an interesting idea. I'm trying not to take sides. So, judicial restraint is a very common sense way of looking at the whole process. Or let me rephrase it. A very common sense way of looking at it is that judicial restraint is a good thing. That a lot of the times you're only looking at the text of the law, the text of the Constitution, or using originalism. I'm sorry, my hair is just getting all in my eyes. I should probably do another COVID haircut. Anyway, or originalism, where you're looking at the original meaning and intent of the words when the law and the Constitution were written, even calling down dictionary definitions when you need to. So, it's not to see the Constitution as a living document. They wrote it, it's there, it's dead. If we want to change it, then that's the job of the people. So, says what it says, and judges are just there to interpret it and say whether the laws meet that requirement or not. So they absolutely don't want to legislate from the bench, which is to just say, like, well, here's how it should be, so we're just going to say it means that. Judges get accused of judicial activism when they are interpreting the Constitution in a way that has effects that just aren't written there. The idea is that the words were written sometimes hundreds of years ago, before modern understandings, before modern technology, before modern legal philosophy, before all that was a thing. So we have to look at the intent of the law, of the body of law, and try to figure out, how does it really apply today? So we can look at arguments that were made when the law was passed or when the Constitution was written. We can look at precepts of legal philosophy and how those have developed. We can look at precedent that has occurred since the law was written and like the direction of legal thought. We can look at the general will. We can look at the ways belief has changed on things as a society. So, and use that to apply it to new situations. This is how, like, the 14th Amendment's due process clause gave us a right to birth control and abortion. It doesn't say anything about that. There's no actual text like, yes, you can get an abortion if you want one, or you have a right to say what happens to your womb. That's not in there. There's nothing like that. So that was just interpreted in these penumbras. It's like, well, you have a right to protection from search and seizure, and you have a right not to quarter soldiers, and you have all these other rights. And that's clear that we want to keep the government out of your private personal life. So that kind of covers abortions. But does it? Can y'all hear that motorcycle? I have my windows open and I'm not sure if this microphone is like unidirectional or if... I'm sorry, that doesn't matter. The problem with both of these ways of looking at it, a more like living document style and a more textual originalist style, is that either way, you can argue whatever the fuck you want. You can say that it means whatever you wanted it to mean. You can come up with some argument about why the framers meant it this way. And I mean, that's the whole point of being a lawyer, right? Is you can argue anything. So, even some of the most adamant textualists end up writing opinions that seem really, really biased. And then you have corrupt Senate majority leaders jamming through as many corrupt, biased judge appointments as possible, when that same majority leader said that a president couldn't appoint a new Supreme Court justice in their last year because it wasn't fair.
I was shocked that former President Obama left so many vacancies and didn't try to fill those positions.
I'll tell you why. I was in charge of the of what we did the last 2 years of the Obama administration.
I will give you full credit for that. And by the way, take a bow. All right, that was a good line.
And then the whole legal validity, of our legal system just turns into a big question mark. So that's neat. Anyway, do some more reading about activism and restraint. Go ahead and Google that stuff. I can't remember if I'm going to post an assignment about this. If I do post an assignment, I'll post some more readings about it too, but I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, I think that's it. Just, yeah, should they try to stick just to the letter of the law, or do they have some room to be like, yeah, in modern times, like, the definition of arms has changed since muskets, so this is kind of a weird right to have now. And either way, whichever way they interpret it, like, we could pass our own fucking amendments if we wanted to. If we could gather the political will, which at this point, I'm not sure our country has the political will to do anything, even survive. You know, I still feel that way. So, I don't actually remember if there is an assignment for this. I don't know. Check your emails. Stay safe. I still have power, although I did lose power, like, for 16 hours earlier in the week. Last week? What day is it? It doesn't matter. Check your email, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye. Why did I do that? That was dumb.